Good afternoon, and thank you for joining our webinar for colorectal cancer prevention, the power of nutrition and lifestyle. My name is Renata Castro, and I am the Clinical Data Coordinator for the Hennessy Institute for Cancer Prevention and Applied Molecular Medicine. And I am honored to be the moderator for today's webinar. On the agenda for today. So first, we will go over the Hennessy Institute's mission. Then we will have a featured presentation on the latest findings and practical strategies for nutritional management and colorectal cancer risk reduction. Then we will hear a powerful and personal patient story. And lastly, the webinar will conclude with an interactive Q&A. To kick off our webinar and introduce our main speaker, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome a leader in the field of cancer prevention. He is a distinguished breast oncologist, a respected cancer genetics specialist, and the medical director of the Hennessy Institute for Cancer Prevention and Applied Molecular Medicine, Dr. Elias Obeid. So today's webinar is brought to you by the Hennessy Institute at HMH, provides a complimentary and personalized cancer risk assessment to help you take control of your health. So please feel free to scan the QR code, and then it will take you to a page that will get you to a survey for you to fill out. So meet our expert. So today's expert is Tricia Scott Soller. Tricia earned a master's. Sorry, one second. So Tricia earned her master's degree in clinical nutrition from Rutgers University and has been with the John Thurl Cancer Center for the past 4 years. Her work is focused on empowering individuals through all stages of cancer care, from prevention to survivorship, with evidence-based personalized nutrition. Tricia brings a profound understanding of food health connection from her professional and personal experience as a person with type 1 diabetes. Thank you so much, Tricia, for joining us today.
Thank you so much. I'm really grateful to the Hennessy family for putting their trust in all of us to try and help to prevent people from getting cancer. And it's much appreciated. Okay, so before we talk about diets and lifestyle, we do need to understand our risk. You guys can all hear me, right? Hey, Nada, you can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So what is your risk? Just like any cancer or any disease in general, there's a balance of factors. But with cancer, we have our family history, DNA, genetics, right? And then on the other side here of our little scale, we have choices that we can make. We have lifestyle choices, you know, food, exercise, environment, things of that nature. You can move to the next one. So our types of colon cancer risk, hereditary risk. These are things such as gene mutations that cause syndromes, such as FAP, which I'm not going to try and pronounce, attenuated FAP, Gardner-Lynch, MAP, cystic fibrosis, and you will hear an account after I speak of a familial, hereditary risk that is a wonderful story. The hereditary risk accounts for 5 to 10% of all colon cancers, and 35% of those are young adult cancers. Your familial risk is your family history of cancer. Even if you do not have a gene mutation, if you have someone in your family who has cancer, then you definitely want to be screened and you want to get your genetic testing to see if, in fact, you are at risk. And then there is the lifestyle environmental risk. Where we live, how we live, the air we breathe, your diet, exercise, how much you drink, what your weight is, things of that nature are all things that we have power to try and change. And that's what I'm going to get into here. You can move forward. So,
Sorry to interrupt you. I think somebody in the comments said you cannot see the slides, so I just want to tell them if you are using a laptop or desktop, you can hover your cursor over content and switch to see the content. Otherwise, you'll be seeing just the speaker's camera.
oh
Thank
yeah, you don't want to just look at me the whole time. Okay, so the good news is that overall rates in colorectal cancer are declining. But the alarming news is that a significant increase in the number of people under 50 with are being diagnosed with colorectal diagnosis. The increased incidence is highest in Alaska Natives, American Indians, African Americans, and Caucasian individuals. About 20% of these incidences in young people are genetic. It's unclear at this time why the large uptick. However, there are some hypotheses that it's related to microbiome changes, antibiotic use, which can change your microbiome, Western diet, sugary drinks, processed foods, less fiber, and then potential environmental causes and being sedentary. So those are some of the things to think about as when we think about young people, unfortunately being diagnosed with with a colorectal diagnosis. You can move forward, thanks. Okay, so fight risk with early detection, right? Know your screening plan. They have recently changed because of this uptick in younger individuals being diagnosed with colorectal cancer. They have brought it down. It used to be 50, I believe, and now they've brought down the screening to 45. You can, they have I'm sure you've seen the ads on TV, the poop in a box. You can do your stool test and you can, if that comes back, then your doctor's definitely going to want to do a colonoscopy. If you are of the age where it's you become at a higher risk, you're definitely going to want to get a colonoscopy. It's painless. It's kind of a pain to take off a day of work, but it could help you, save your life. So get your genetic testing, do your screening. If you have somebody in your family who has had colon cancer, you definitely want to make sure that you're discussing with your primary care that you have this family risk and you want to get checked and tell them you want to be checked. It's important. And the earlier you catch it, the better off you are. Now, if you are at high risk, you definitely want to get the colonoscopy. And the team at the Hennessy Institute, when they do your genetic testing, they give you a wonderful kind of breakdown of all of the screenings that you may or may not need based on your risk or based on any mutations that you might have. It's such an important tool in our toolbox that we didn't have, however many years ago, and it's really important that you pay attention. Okay, next slide. I promise I'm going to talk about food. Okay, I'm talking about food. Okay, so there is evidence that your diet, your physical activity, you can change your risk if you make some changes. It's very important to keep in mind a couple of things. One is that dietary research is typically done by like a dietary recall. So researchers will ask patients, what do you typically eat? Do you eat 4 or 5 servings of vegetables a day? And people answer. So sometimes there's human error because we all want to say we eat more veggies than we do. But so these are things you have to keep in mind when you look at research. The gold standard for research is what's called a randomized control trial. And randomized controlled trials are hard to do when you're doing dietary research, because ideally what you would do would be you put somebody in the hospital for a year and you say, these people get this type of diet and these people get this type of diet, and then we can really see what the differences are. Obviously, obviously that's not really something that, is very feasible. So we do a lot of retrospective looking, and we kind of look back at people's medical records, EHR, things like that. So all that to say, they do have some evidence that is out there that is, as you can see here, strong evidence that's convincing and probable. I'm going to get a little tiny bit into the weeds just so you understand these terms. Strong convincing is high, robust, and consistent. So that means that the evidence out there is consistent that physical activity is going to decrease your risk. And that processed meat, alcoholic drinks, body fatness, and adult attained height increases your risk. And that one kind of blew me away a little bit, that tall people have a higher risk of colorectal cancer, but it actually is a thing. So just to kind of give you an idea there, like the probable is solid evidence, but open to further evaluation, meaning that there probably needs to be some more really robust studies. Limited evidence, suggestive, certain things, let me go back to probable. So foods containing dietary fiber, which I'm going to talk about, dairy products, calcium supplements, these are things specific to colorectal cancer that I will talk a little bit more about in the coming slides. And then the increased risk with red meat, of course, which I'm sure that you have heard. So then it goes on to some of the more limited evidence. There is evidence out there, but there is nothing that is causal. So they can't support a causal relationship between, say, shellfish and a decreased risk of colorectal cancer. So that kind of gives you a little bit of an explanation on, like, when you hear people or when you read magazines where they say, there's evidence for this, this is kind of how it works. Okay, you can move forward. Thanks. So what can you do? These are the modifiable risk factors that we talked about earlier. Obesity, diabetes, and insulin resistance all kind of play together. Adipose tissue that's like found in obesity releases pro-inflammatory proteins, and they can cause chronic inflammation, which then is associated with, and inflammation is associated with many cancers. Chronic inflammation, not the kind of inflammation you get like when you give yourself a cut, but it is also seen in colorectal cancer. Obesity can also result in insulin resistance, and but not all insulin resistant people are obese. So you can be thin, you can be fit even, and you can have insulin resistance, which is another reason why you have to get your blood sugars checked when you go to the doctor, so you know what's happening with your body. But insulin resistance then causes your pancreas to put out more insulin. And they think that this circulating insulin in your bloodstream, along with another insulin-like growth factor, can stimulate the growth of colon cancer cells. So that's kind of how that's related. Smoking, as you know, is a modifiable risk factor. You can quit smoking. Smoking is, thank God, has gone down quite a lot. Alcohol consumption has gone up, especially after the pandemic. And there is some new research that has come out that, they've said that no alcohol is safe. And then you have your diet, which we'll get into even more, and physical activity, which I'll also get into more. Okay, you can move to the next slide. So what does my colon do? Do we know what our colon does? Move to the next slide, and I'll show you. There it is. So here's your digestive system, right? You eat your food, it goes down into your stomach and then into your intestines. And then you see where, like, your nutrients are all absorbed, and then your colon will take what's left after it's been all broken down. It absorbs it absorbs water, electrolytes, so your sodium, that's kind of where all your electrolytes are absorbed. And then in your colon, you have bacteria that lives in there. And it's good bacteria. We want that bacteria. And it feeds on the waste, it breaks it down further, and then, well, then you poop. You can move forward. Okay, so this is, I'm going to get into these, but this is kind of the big picture of all the things that I'm going to talk about, the foods I'm going to talk about that increase your risk for colon cancer. And then I'll talk about things that you can do to prevent it. You can move forward. Okay. So red meat. Red meat has high levels of heme iron in it. And we need heme iron, but we don't need really high levels of heme iron. So it produces free radicals and can cause damage to the gut lining. The recommendations, if you're going to eat red meat, are to limit it to like 12 to 18 ounces of cooked weight per week. So, it's not a minimal amount. It's not a ton, though. It's not eating meat every single day unless you're eating little small portions of it every single day. You can move forward. So processed meat are things that, most people are very familiar with. Bacon, now I'm drawing a blank. Bacon, things that are cured, sausages, things that are anything that you could think of that has is smoked. Basically what happens is the nitrates and the nitrites convert to a compound that in your gut that is carcinogenic. So we want to stay away from processed meat as well. High temperatures. I love to grill. And so this particular one wasn't something that I really wanted to hear, but high temperature cooking, especially of meats, causes these compounds, these heterocyclic amines, and hydrocarbons that can cause cancer. There are ways to kind of mitigate that, especially if you do like to grill like I do. Even just using like tin foil on your grill can help. Marinating your food in vinegars can help with that. So you can mitigate the factors a little bit. Also, keep in mind that everything is dose dependent. So the more you eat of smoked foods, the more red meat you eat, the more high temperatures, the more grilling, that increases your risk more. But if you do it once in a while, it's fine. It is not going to kill you. I hope. All right, so fried and fatty meats and excess sugar. I mean, those are kind of the things that I think most people know about. They can cause inflammation, your, excess sugar, your high fat foods, your processed foods, prepared foods. snacks, bakery goods, sugary things, desserts, all of those things with excess sugar are going to increase your risk. Now, again, what I said before, dose dependent, if you're having your birthday cake, please have your birthday cake. Okay, you can move forward. All right. So now I've told you all the things that you shouldn't do. Let's see what we can do. So food first. The biggest question I get usually from people is, what kind of supplements can I take so I don't get this cancer, that cancer, diabetes, whatever. Really, we want you to eat plant foods, vegetables, beans, fruits, nuts, whole grains. All of these foods have antioxidants in them. They may the phyto chemicals in those plant foods can protect your body's cells. The carotenoids, the lycopene, the selenium. I'm sure you've heard lycopene for prostate cancer, things like that. They are protective to your cells. Your legumes, green bananas, nuts, oatmeal, things of that nature, your whole grains, they produce something called short chain fatty acids, and they have anti-cancer properties as well. So, eating all of these, that's why we say you should eat a plant-forward diet. Okay, you can go to the next one. Fiber. So fiber is, when you think about fiber, there's two types of fiber. There's soluble fiber and there's insoluble fiber. And if you think of soluble fiber as like a sponge that absorbs water and traps like fats, sugars, cholesterol, things like that in your intestines, and pulls them out. So soluble fiber is good, right? It can help regulate the rate of like a glucose digestion and absorption, helps with your blood sugar control. I'm sure you've heard having more fiber can help bring down your blood sugar or help to create less of a spike in your blood sugar. And again, kind of goes back to what we were talking about before with the insulin. You want to try and keep that sort of level as opposed to doing this. So sources of your soluble fiber, you have oats, you have beans, nuts, barley, things of that nature. Now, insoluble fiber moves through your digestive system a little bit more quickly. I like to think of it as like a broom. It's kind of cleaning out your intestines as it goes. And it helps prevent constipation. And it moves food through your colon. And so when you're doing that, what it's also doing is pulling out toxins, right? So when you are consistently constipated, things are sitting in your gut. You want to pull those things out. You want to pull out all of the toxins, and that's why fiber is good for you. You want to try and get at least 20 to 30 grams a day. That is, it's not hard to do. And you can see here, I put in some, if you do a half a cup of bran cereal, you get 14 grams right there. So that's your breakfast, right? And a half a cup these are considered serving sizes here. And some have less than others, which means you're going to have to, try a little harder. I think if you go to the next slide. Oh, no, go back to, sorry. There we go. There is a comment, what about rice and pasta? Very little fiber. So you are actually, when people have diarrhea, we tell them to eat rice. It kind of binds a little bit, and it slows things down a little too. So you want to think of more like whole wheat. So your whole wheat pastas, yes. Your whole wheat breads, your anything that is in your fruits and vegetables, those are going to have fiber in them. So as you can see here, and non-starchy veggies like cauliflower, parsnips, things like that, they are going to be higher in fiber. Okay, you can move forward too, I guess. Okay, there. So other considerations besides fiber, which of course is the number one thing to move things through your colon. The B6, which is things in like salmon and tofu, bananas, avocados, those are higher sources of B6, and they're associated with lowering your risk for colorectal cancer. And then calcium, which is an interesting one. Foods high in calcium, like milk, edamame, yogurt, cheese, things like that. Kidney beans, tahini, canned sardines, those all may help reduce the risk of colorectal cancer. One consideration, anyone who has a history of or a potential risk for prostate cancer, you want to be careful with the amount of calcium. There's just a little bit of a higher risk with calcium with prostate cancer. And you can move forward. More additional considerations. Saturated fats, we talked about a little bit. So here I'm telling you to have dairy products, and now I'm saying that saturated fats are not great. So you can have dairy products, obviously. You may want to consider doing like a lower fat or skim or something like that. You want to change out your saturated fats for things like olive oil, seafood, nuts, seeds, avocados. All of those are really great sources of unsaturated fatty acids. And as we talked about a little bit earlier, the alcohol. So the current recommendation is to drink nothing. If you do choose to drink, limit your intake, 1 drink or less for women, 2 drinks or less for men. And if you go to the next slide, so this kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of what an actual drink looks like. Because most of us, if you go to a restaurant or you pour it at home, it can tend to be a little bit larger than what the actual serving size is. So this kind of just gives you an idea of what an actual serving size is for alcohol. And 5 fluid ounces of wine, 1.5 ounces of vodka or something, and then a 12-ounce beer. So for women, 1 of those a day, and for men, 2 of those a day. And actually, the AICR recommends that, and they just recommend that you do not drink at all.
So, Shana, do you mind if I just intercept here one thing? If you go back to this slide, so I think towards the bottom down of the slide, put here heavy drinking and also binge drinking. So binge drinking is what many of us don't really think of it as a risk factor for alcohol intake. And more recent has been now geared to understanding what happens with binge drinking. So there are people who don't drink, for example, for like 3, 4, 5 weeks in a row, and then all of a sudden they go, let's say, to a bar or they're at a party and they have what is on the slide. So 4 drinks or more within 2 hours, 5 for women, 5 drinks or more within 2 hours for men. And that's considered binge drinking. And that can be, as risky as chronic, daily, 1 or 2 drinks per day drinking. The reason is the liver is able to metabolize a certain amount of alcohol. And when you give the liver this very high amount of alcohol, there's no way for it to process everything at the same time. So a lot of the toxins that are potentially carcinogenic can be accumulating and can cause or be at risk for cancer. Recently, this has been even linked to breast cancer So not just we're talking about colon cancer, but some other cancers as well. So just wanted to point this out because this is really new. And although it has been, looked at, differently, but more and more research recently has detected this as a really major risk. Sorry to interrupt.
No, always, always. No, that's a really good point. And I do think also, young people tend to kind of be a little bit more apt to binge drinking than I mean, everyone is capable of it, but I do think it is something to really look at with young people as well. In addition to that, everything you consume, all your medicines, alcohol, everything does go through your liver. And so I know we're talking about colon cancer, but you do want to consider that as well when you're eating, fatty liver disease. I won't go down that road, but it's all connected to the GI system, right? And the risk of cancer. Okay, you can go ahead. Sorry. So this one was something that when I read the research, I was very excited about because, and I know Elias feels the same way, because his favorite thing is to drink coffee, and so is mine. 3 cups a day is the threshold where they say it's actually good for you. It's good for your colon. So I am very happy to report this. I'm hoping that it is actually super valid studies. No, there's pretty good research, and it does make sense. It helps to like move things through your colon, right? You have a cup of coffee, and all of a sudden you feel like you have to go to the bathroom. And there he is drinking coffee. Um, so yeah, that's a really nice effect of coffee. And of course, hydration. Hydration prevents constipation. Again, we're talking about moving things through your colon, right? We want to make sure that the toxins are not sitting in your colon. So it supports your digestion, your energy levels, flushes out your toxins, definitely keep yourself hydrated. Okay, you can move forward. Now, I know this isn't diet, but it's just as important. Exercise guidelines. We really need to be getting our exercise. We want to do moderate aerobic. I actually read a new study. I don't have the name of it here. It's escaping me, but I just read a study that they were doing exercise while in treatment, and the patients did better if they were doing the exercise program while they were in cancer treatment. And so that's really their side effects were less, their reoccurrence went down. So we want to make sure we're getting 150 to 300 minutes a week. I know it sounds like a lot. It's really not. 45 minutes, 5 days a week. Really not that bad. You want to get your heart rate up, right? That's like intense aerobic. You want to get your heart rate up. Things like running, cycling, and then we need strength training. Strength training is good for your bones, obviously good for your muscles, it's good for your bones. It also helps you to lose weight, if that's what one of your goals is. And then flexibility in core, right? Stretching, balance, core strengthening exercises. All of those things are important as we get older, especially. We want to make sure that our bones are strong. We want to make sure that we're not, at risk for falling, breaking something. All of those things are really important. And you also, when you exercise, you improve your insulin sensitivity, which goes back to what I was talking about before, with the chronic inflammation and the risk of cancer. And then when you exercise, you're moving things through your gut faster as well. Ask any runner and they'll tell you it's true. So that kind of reduces your risk because of the moving of the transit time. Okay, you can move forward. All right, so takeaways. You want to eat your fruits and veggies, right? They're fiber foods. You want your whole grains. Coffee is fine. Foods and beverages that have calcium, your dairy products, leafy vegetables, things like beans, legumes, nuts, seeds, all of those things. I mean, you've heard it before, the Mediterranean diet. It's very much like the Mediterranean diet. But we do want to keep down the amounts of sugar sweetened beverages, alcohol, excess sugars, excess salt, avoiding smoked processed meats, keeping your actual red meat intake to between, I think it was 12 and 18 ounces a week. And try a vegetarian Monday, or meatless Monday, or like a Taco Tuesday with tofu, or Tofu Tuesday, something along those lines, to try and just incorporate some more plant-based proteins into your life. And then just get outside, go for walks, get physical activity, get some vitamin D, and just try and maintain a healthy weight. And also mental health is really important um, in any journey of any day, not just for cancer. I think there's one more slide, maybe. Oh, yeah. So I am also doing a hands-on cooking class for Colon Cancer Month. It's going to be at the Wellness Center if you are here in New Jersey, in Maywood. It's right by Hackensack. And I'm going to teach, we're going to chop, we're going to talk about colon cancer, we're going to talk about prevention, things like that. So if you'd like to join me, you can just use that QR code and sign up. Thanks so much. I hope if you have any questions, let me know. I know I probably spoke really quickly.
This is great. Thank you so much, Trisha.
I have a question.
Should we take questions now, or should we just have maybe Noel talk to us a little bit now, and then we can probably answer more questions towards the end? I did answer some of the questions that came through the chat, but at this point, I'd like for all of you to meet our community advocate, Noel Colina. Noel is a passionate hereditary cancer patient advocate and a certified integrative nutrition health coach. Her work is fueled by her own personal story. After losing two young cousins to colon cancer, and then discovering through genetic testing that she has Lynch syndrome, which is something in their family. She is now committed to helping others to take a proactive approach to their health. Noelle is a mother of two and is a powerful voice for patient advocacy and preventative wellness. Noelle, thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Dr. Obeid. Can you hear me okay? Awesome. Hi, everybody. I am so thrilled to be joining today, as colon cancer awareness is something deeply personal to me. And so I'm hoping to empower you to be the CEO of your health and to remove some of the fear around genetic testing. So as Dr. Obeid mentioned, I'm a patient advocate, a certified health coach, a mother, and in 2021, I found out I have Lynch syndrome. You can go to the next slide. So what is Lynch syndrome? Lynch syndrome is an inherited genetic condition that increases the risk of developing certain types of cancers, especially colon cancer, often at a younger age. And as Trisha mentioned earlier, hereditary cancer conditions account for about 5 to 10% of all cancers. So Lynch syndrome, you're at the highest risk for colorectal and endometrial cancer, with increased risks for ovarian, stomach, small intestine, and brain cancers. It is an autosomal dominant condition, which means that a child of a person with Lynch has a 50% chance of inheriting the mutation. It's caused by mutations in DNA mismatch repair genes, and regular frequent screenings like colonoscopies are crucial, often starting at a younger age than recommended, to detect and treat early cancer. Lynch syndrome affects approximately 1 in 279 people. You can go to the next slide, please. So here you'll see how Lynch syndrome increases lifetime cancer risks as compared to the general population. So the identification of a hereditary syndrome could clearly directly impact the healthcare that providers recommend for their patients and the proactive approach that individuals can take for their health in terms of screening and overall well-being. Next slide, please. I wanted to share my family's journey with cancer to help you understand the power of awareness and early action. So you'll see here in 1999, I was about 12 years old, and my cousin was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer at the age of 24. This was a cousin on my dad's side. My mother knew that my grandfather on my dad's side also had colon cancer in his early 40s. So she started advocating for my 3 siblings and I to get screened, which was really not easy. It was hard to find a provider that was willing to screen at such young ages. But my mother was relentless, which I'm very grateful for. And at 21 years old, I started getting regular colonoscopies. Every 5 to 8 years was the recommendation at the time for my provider. But during that period, our family experienced other cancer diagnoses and losses. In 2009, another cousin of mine was diagnosed and passed away from colon cancer at the age of 23. And that loss really contributed to my desire to want to work in healthcare. And I just had a lot of questions, like what can we do day to day that we can affect our well-being? Why does cancer occur, especially at such young ages? And what can we do to prevent it? 5 years later, another one of my cousins, also on my dad's side, at 27 years old, passed away of colorectal cancer. So in the span of 18 years, I saw 3 young family members diagnosed with the same cancer type, lost 2 of them, and other relatives also received a diagnosis in that time span, but nobody was offered genetic testing. In 2017, my dad was diagnosed with urothelial cell cancer, which is in the kidney, and bladder cancer. Still no genetic testing offered. And in March of 2021, he was diagnosed with sebaceous carcinoma, which is a rare skin cancer type. So given his own cancer and his family history, the dermatologist strongly recommended genetic testing, which he did through Ambry Genetics, and the results came back positive for Lynch syndrome. You can go to the next slide. Ambry offered us family testing for all blood relatives at no cost, which made it easier for my siblings and I to make the decision to go through with testing. And that is how we found out that 3 out of the 4 children in my family were also positive for Lynch syndrome. So the positive result was not what I was hoping for, but I've really been able to change how I look at this information. And I really do view it as a gift. And I now have the knowledge to get proper screenings, and I have the chance to help my children as well. So with Lynch syndrome, there's a 50% chance that my kids might have it. And I hope that's not a concern for them, but I know that when the time comes, I'll get them tested and I'll empower them to act with the information that's available to them. You can go to the next slide. So I wish we had this information for my cousins who passed away at a young age. If only they had been asked about their family history at doctor's appointments, identified as high risk, and given the opportunity to get proper screenings, they might still be here today, which is why I'm so grateful for what the Hennessy Institute is doing, raising awareness and making genetic testing more accessible. With genetic testing, we can potentially prevent a cancer before someone ever receives a diagnosis. And I firmly believe that no one should die of colon cancer. So this Colon Cancer Awareness Month, I'd like to leave you with some suggestions. Ask about your family history or share your family history with your loved ones. I feel like it's something that's not talked so openly about. Also, take into consideration, you should really be able to talk openly with your healthcare providers. And if you feel like you're not taken seriously, it's time to find another team. There's a lot of great healthcare providers out there that are familiar with hereditary cancer and precision medicine and preventative health. So please build a team that is in your corner. Genetic testing is just one part of proactive healthcare. Trisha shared so much today, and it just really helps to make healthy choices where you can. So for me personally, that's working on mindfulness, nutrition, and movement. And then lastly, find your why. I hear so many people that are afraid to go through with genetic testing or afraid to go to their doctor sometimes. A lot of people think ignorance is bliss. And I understand it can be easy to bury our heads in the sand when it comes to our health. For me, my why is generational health. I have two little boys. I want to be here and I want to be well for a long time. And I want to be able to empower them and their children and future generations to be proactive when it comes to their healthcare. Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Noel. This was really very, very insightful and also very touching just to know your family story, your personal story. And thanks for sharing it. It's just not easy to share this sometimes. I'm sure many of us learned something that I saw in the chat that some people did not even have never heard of Lynch syndrome before.
I always like to share too, Lynch syndrome is actually more common than celiac disease. It's just not talked about enough, but we're talking about it now. So that's exciting to me.
That's right. And people think of it also just colon cancer risk, but it's just more than just colon cancer. It's multiple different cancers, including uterus cancer, as you mentioned. In fact, probably one third to one half of the families they discover they have Lynch syndrome because of multiple members or maybe one member of the family who gets a diagnosis of uterus cancer. So really, it's important to know your family history. And as you mentioned, I mean, putting our head in the sand does not really take anything away. I tell when I counsel patients about their genetic testing, I tell them that your gene is with you. It has been with you since you were born. Not testing for it does not take it away from you. But when you do the testing and you know about it, then you're empowered because you can do something about it. And most of the times you'll be able either to eliminate the risk or to make that risk extremely low, that when you get a cancer diagnosis, it's very early, that's curable, and then you don't have to worry about it.
I see one of the questions, will Lynch show up in blood work? So genetic testing is available through saliva and blood. And I know that the Hennessy Institute has this risk assessment survey, which will help you understand your profile and if you meet criteria for genetic testing. And
So,
just a side note, the great thing about Ambry on the report, it really helped you to understand the guidelines with your condition and how often you should be going for colonoscopies, how often you should be doing certain types of blood work. So it really made the information manageable and not as overwhelming.
true. One of the sometimes the difficulty in getting genetic testing is one getting through to a genetic counselor, to also getting the insurance potentially to cover it because the guidelines are good. The guidelines identify, but the guidelines sometimes may miss things because we when they put the guidelines together, they want to make sure they capture as many positives as possible. So at the Hennessy Institute, you can see here the QR code, which we tried to make it as easy and accessible to anyone who's interested in knowing about their risk factors, not just genetics, but any cancer risk. So by hovering your phone over the QR code, you'll get to an online risk assessment tool. You'll answer a few questions, and one of our navigators can reach out to you. They will offer you genetic testing. They'll tell you if you're based on the information that you provided, that whether your insurance covers for it or not. Some individuals they choose to pursue testing, although the insurance does not cover it. Luckily, the cost of genetic testing has gone down significantly. We're talking, it used to be thousands and thousands of dollars just to get one or two genes tested, and now we can get to multiple genes, up to 72 or even 84 genes, all tested at the same time within the same test, and all for that one cost of maybe $250 for some of the labs. So, and you don't need to repeat the testing. It's a one-time thing unless there are any newer genes added that are discovered. But for now, this test is enough one time to be done to know if you have a genetic predisposition or, as Noah mentioned, hereditary cancer predisposition.
Thank you, Dr. Obeid. Thank you, Noel, and thank you, Tricia. Now we do have some questions from the participants today. Thank you so much for adding your questions in the chat. If we do not address your question, we will put an answer in the chat. So this is Kathleen's question. What are the causes of increased colon cancer rates in younger people?
I guess I could answer that. I think I mentioned it earlier on the slides, and Dr. Obeid may have more to say, but they're not really 100% sure what the uptick is about, but they are looking at things like environmental factors, diet, exercise, and alcohol, things such as that.
Yeah, for some reason, we're seeing more and more the younger onset colon cancers, and that's why the guidelines moved from starting at age 40, say age 50, to now starting at age 45. And I don't know if in the next 5 years or sooner we might even see an earlier screening for colorectal cancer, just because we have seen more and more younger individuals with this cancer diagnosis.
Thank you, Tricia and Dr. Obeid. So this question is from Joyce. Are we chicken and turkey, are they also increased colorectal cancer risks like red meat?
No, they're not. They are not as high a risk because of the heme iron that is in red meat is higher than in chicken and fish. I mean, chicken. I think she said chicken and turkey. So, I still say plant forward, but no, it's not the same.
Thank you. Judith has a question. Does microwaving affect nutritional value? Microwaving.
Does what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Does microwaving your food affect the nutritional value of the food?
So I actually don't know if I know the answer to that because I don't even own a microwave. I will say that I don't know. I don't think so. I think that I know like when you microwave veggies, it tends to keep the nutrients in. So I'm gonna say it doesn't matter. I think actually I saw the question and I think it was about coffee, and that doesn't matter either. Actually, I do have I saw some of the questions on coffee. It was actually only caffeinated coffee. The decaf, for some reason in the particular study, was not as effective as the caffeinated coffee, but they did not do, they didn't differentiate between, someone asked about medium, dark, and they didn't differentiate between what types of coffee. So TBD on that, but you do want to try and get your caffeine, I think. But it is also antioxidants because the beans themselves are filled with antioxidants.
Thank you, Trisha. Monica mentioned that 3 cups of coffee is awesome, but how about the milk and sugar?
Well, you want to go easy on the milk and sugar. You need a little dairy, so a little bit of milk in there or some low-fat milk is just fine. But I have seen the drinks at Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts, and you may want to take a step back from those.
I see there are 2 questions. Trisha, I don't know if you can help. I have my own ideas about that. One of the question is, are frozen vegetables better than fresh vegetables? And the other one is about plant burgers like Impossible Meat or Beyond the Meat.
Mm-hmm.
What I would like you to comment on is, of course, fresh versus frozen, and 2, processing of food.
Yeah. So believe it or not, frozen vegetables can be more nutritious because of the way they are processed. And yes, they are considered a processed food. They pick them when they're ripe, and then flash freeze them, which it keeps the nutrients in the vegetables. And it's not like, so if you're fresh vegetable, and let's say it's coming from California, and then it gets on a truck, and then it comes across the country, and then it lands in New Jersey, you're losing your nutrients during the transit time. So actually, frozen vegetables are fantastic. And I definitely support people eating frozen vegetables. Now, if you can go to your local farm and pick your strawberries and bring them home, that's wonderful too, because it's local. But sometimes we don't consider the transit time and the production time of getting fresh foods to our plate, so to speak. And then your other question was, oh, processed foods. So processed foods are a big thing, right? But like I just said, frozen foods are considered processed foods. There's different levels of processed foods. There's a thing called, it's called a nova, and I think it came out of Brazil, and it basically categorizes different types of processing. And so you may have like your tofu is a processed food, right? Because it comes from a soybean. So that is a process, but it's healthy. You may have, say, beans in a can, healthy if you're into the salt of them. But again, they're taken, the beans are put into a can, it's processed. Now, then there's your ultra processed foods, which is all in, you're hearing about it every day now on the news and all of that. And what we consider those are things like your donuts, your foods that are loaded with so that let's say your flour, your wheat is stripped down, which is processing, and turned into white flour and then made into a donut. So we're getting process over process over process here. And so you're stripping out a lot of the nutrients of the food and putting in lots of fats, lots of sugar, lots of things like that. So when you say ultra processed foods, and I'm not sure if this is where you wanted me to go with this, but when you say ultra processed food or processed foods, there's definitely levels of it. And there's a lot of fear mongering going on, but certain processed foods are healthy. And I'm actually doing a class next month at the Cancer Center on processed foods. But you got to watch the amount of processing that that your foods are what your intake is. Does that make sense?
Yeah. There are things that we've started to hear about preservatives or additives that are allowed in the United States by the FDA, but have not been allowed in Europe by the European governing agencies over there. And now we're discovering that maybe some of them are carcinogenic and things have not been, at least either researched or disclosed. What can you tell us about it?
So yes and no. There are differences in some of the preservatives that we use here in the United States versus Europe. Some of them are just different names, and a lot of these influencers will, say, well, we don't have such and such in our food. Europe has a different name, which, I'm trying to think of an example, but basically it's the same thing, just a different name. So a lot of them are the same. They are just called different things. But that's not to say that, it's not important to look into preservatives. Again, the processed foods, they're the ones that have the preservatives in them. In addition, a lot of these energy drinks, there's all kinds of unregulated things in those. That's another consideration. They don't, if they're not governed by the FDA, then there's really not a lot of oversight either. Same with supplements, not a lot of oversight. All your vitamins and minerals that come in the, they're not oversight by the FDA, so we don't really know what's in them.
Thank you, Tricia. And if your question has not been answered today, we will put an email in the chat and we can answer any questions after the fact via email. And just another quick question from the chat. Can a plant-based diet prevent or reduce the possibility of colon cancer?
Oh, I think we answered that. Yes, I mean, I do think so. Again, like I said, this research is good. And I think it can, I think also what you have to consider is all the things we talked about, right? Taking all of your risk factors and trying to decrease those while then also increasing all the things that are healthy for you, like, a plant-based diet, exercise, mental health, stress relief, all of those things.
Thank you, Tricia.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for joining today. We do appreciate your time and participation. And this will conclude the webinar. And please feel free to shoot us an email if you have any questions from today's webinar that weren't addressed. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much and goodbye.